here we are, another CIRF report, everybody, for the week of October 13th through the 19th, 2022. This one's called The Urge to Follow. Really just can't believe how fast time is moving. Is it just me? It seems like I just did a CIRF report yesterday, and here we are doing another one. Not complaining by any means, but this is a big report here. Got lots of big energies to report and some solutions to hand out. Does that look like the right posture? Let's do this. All right, here's our summary slide for the influence. We are going to have another one of these triangulations. That's what this is intended to be. For the solution at the end, we have two parts and pieces here. We got the influence. It's one thing to know what you're going to expect to be faced with or feel. And then there's another whole discussion on how to behave, how best to react to that energy. And that's what we call the solution, the behavioral solution. All right, so the influence is a weird triangulation. I don't think we've ever seen really anything like it. Just a little bit of overlap. So a low congruency score, but the reason why is the outlier DreamBot is sort of out into, it looks like out of the influence, which it is. I think it's more into the solution. And we have seen that in prior weeks, but not recently. So the DreamBot is focused on getting clarity and helping. Those are two very strong memes in the collective unconscious. Clarity and helping. That does dovetail a little bit into following. According to the I-Ching, it's this leading, following continuum is going to be really strong according to the I-Ching, and that does match, especially with Venus combust. Venus and Sun together in a conjunction makes Venus very weak. So all things are weak with Venus. We'll discuss what that means. And it's also square to Pluto. So we got this control. And that is the leader-follower continuum. And it's in a square, so there's a lot of pressure to do it. So there's this urge to follow. Now, that sounds all simple, but the tropical astrology is really complex. The big news, you've got a grand air trine all week. We have Venus combust. The following week is going to be where the eclipse is, but also just before the eclipse, you're going to have Venus cazimi, because Venus and Sun are in the same declination. Then we also this week have Mars square Neptune. We have Uranus and North Node still. And then the big one is Sun, Venus, square Pluto, as I mentioned before. We also have several T-squares, three of them, three different T-squares, all arranged by the moon. It's not moon in the T-square. Moon is in the T-square on one of them, but moon creates the T-square on two of the others. Blah. All right, so very confusing. Let's nail this down and get started. Whoopsie. When I hit the button, it jumped. And so I've got to move everything back. Man, that really sucks. All right, here we go. Now, one of the announcements we have for the comments is that there's no winner this week because we didn't have any more than 2 rumbles or 2 likes on YouTube. So nobody won, but there are some notable comments, and I do appreciate every single comment. Shout out to Shelly. This report is very insightful. Thank you for the downloads. I am new to the channel. Welcome, Shelly. And Dor and Pat, I don't know if you remember the Lucifer Satan discussion, but Dor and Pat has a very long comment here about, more on that, the history of it, the Catholic Church, the Roman Emperor. So if you're interested in that stuff, go to the last week's CIRF report and scroll down and read that comment. Doran Pat says, I like your read. Sounds hopeful for the light and the warriors for the light, which I would consider you to be one. Well, thank you, Doran Pat. Being a warrior of light does not mean being loud and aggressive. That is just another dark cult lie. I totally agree. That's over on YouTube. And shout out to Doran Pat. Thank you for that. And then over on Rumble, we have Not For Me To Say that admits to missing a Wednesday. I get it. It is crazy busy. Nose to the Grindstone and Country Coach 1947 says all levels are great. Thank you for your expertise. And Babuska Bitch says, yeah, good sound and is always inspiring. Well, that's what's interesting is I'm not a cheerleader. I don't do that in my counseling. I don't do that in my life coaching, my astrology readings. As I think most of you know, I try to get to clarity. I try to get to the truth, and just it is what it is. And I think people really appreciate that. But I think there is that inspiring edge. So I hope so. But I don't want to make that the primary emphasis. All right, here's the Dreambot. Let's zoom in. Weird Dreambot. Remember last week, Granddad was up at the top. Now it's still there, but halfway down. I don't consider it a part of any meme, but we have helping in blue. I mean, it's a strong helping. All right. And we have avenues towards clarity. And this was really inspired by what we're going to be talking about in the solutions, but it's a lot of arrows, and it's a variety of things like you read books, you get details, you spot things, you explore. Even dreams are there to help you gain clarity. Lucidity implies clarity. We experiment to get more data in science, blah, 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 blah. Also, experiment is relevant to what's happening in the world right now with the big hubbub is that Pfizer's admitting that that transmission of blocking transmission was never tested, was never experimented on. So I think that's all relevant. But anyway, gaining clarity. It's all roads lead to clarity. This could be seen as the Great Awakening. Anybody? All right. Let's get into the astrology. And we have some exciting times coming up. I think typically when we enter into eclipse season, that week or two prior is like a lull. There's like low energy and like the calm before the storm, but this is not one of those weeks. We got a lot going on. I want to start with Saturn square Uranus is still there. Now this one is opening. You can barely tell this, but the red intensity here. Oh, let me darken this just a touch, just to help highlight where I am. It does lighten up just a little bit, but that square is the protest square, the vying for the future, because Uranus is over the North Node, and it's this freedom versus keeping everything the same. It's change versus sameness. And I'm going to mention that now because I think I'm going to get sidetracked with all sorts of other stuff. We also have, this is not this week, we're looking at these vertical lines, all this stuff in between the vertical lines. So next week, we're going to have something big just with, not even the eclipse, just before the eclipse on the 22nd or maybe 23rd. You're going to have the sun and Venus make an exact conjunction. It's going to be the Cazimi. They are going to be in the same piece of the sky. And then they both go hand in hand into the eclipse. So Venus is a very important topic just for the eclipse, so the whole next 6 months, but also this week in the same manner. So Venus just being on the other side of the sun this week compared to where she will be during the eclipse. So I'll go over that in gory detail and a whole lot more, a lot of squares, but we have this grand air trine, and all these trines tend to go, and it's very exact. See, because we have these numbers here, this is when this alignment goes exact, and all of them go exact this week. So very strong grand earth trine. So going into Thursday, the 13th, here we've got the grand earth trine, and almost looks like there's 3 of them, but Mercury is pretty early in Libra and only makes 2 trines, so not a complete grand trine. So the grand trine really is only on the sun and Venus. Venus and the sun 2.5 degrees away. It makes Venus dimmed. So everything about Venus is shined out or burnt out, and makes her vulnerable. So things that are vulnerable are peace. Peace is vulnerable. Ability to harmonize with others, ability to love, probably cast doubts on all those kinds of things. So we have intellectualism now this is the grand air trine, and intellectualism is kind of the stamp with the grand air trine, the big picture, but without being able to relate. So there's this social piece that's sort of weakened. So if it becomes very mentally heavy, not heavy, it can be light, but very mentally intense this week. But it's sort of like an autism alignment, right? So you can't really emotionally understand other people or relate to them because of Venus's combust, but you have a higher ability to logic and reason and intellectualism. So with Venus combust, lacks peace, and ego can't harmonize. Incidentally, this whole trine here, this side is over to Mars, the fighter. So now it's sort of makes it easy to fight because your peace is vulnerable, your peace is weak, making you probably not automatically want to fight. But now with the trine over to Mars, it sort of makes it easy to fight. And that's an interesting one because you can have like a square with Mars that sort of makes that. So this is the sort of the opposite way that we end up in the same alignment, which is the fighting, the inability to harmonize or misunderstand others, especially as things get emotional. So the air signs are good at sort of being able to objectify the emotions or maybe even judge, I would say, is common across the air signs, and that's common with what we have here, these alignments. Then the obvious other point is Saturn, and Saturn's planet of limitation, the way things are, tradition, foundation. And so that's easily brought into the mix here. And so now with that influence on weakened Venus, that already makes you susceptible to following. And we're going to get into more details here, especially with the I-Ching. But we start here, and it's this alignment right here. It's going to be here all week, and it's only going to get stronger. And so you have a weakened Venus, everything that we just talked about, square over to Pluto. The Pluto is power and control, just wants to control everything. Well, this pressure to control something that's weakened makes your ego much more vulnerable. Vulnerable Venus, vulnerable Sun. And so pressure and control for equality, all things Libra, or we can turn it around and go the lack of equality as a precursor to control. So I think you're going to see this a lot this week, especially as things are starting to unravel. The narrative is unraveling right before your eyes. But I think that lack of equality could come out in some way as a precursor, as a excuse to control. And with your weakened Venus, it just makes you a little bit more gullible to go along with it. So that's the whole urge to follow thing. That's where that's coming. And then lastly, this is, I believe, all week, you've got Mars square Neptune is really strong, at least at the beginning of the week. And then Mars square Jupiter, she's square to both of them, but it's going to get stronger towards Jupiter towards the end of the week. But with Neptune here, and these are in a very loose conjunction, very far apart, but still close enough to be in a conjunction. And that's all square to Mars. So it's confusing action. It's illusions. It's escapism. So, and there's almost a pressure to do those things, a pressure to do the confusing actions just because of that square. There's almost an emphasis on it. So when you've got confusing actions, can't quite make heads or tails of something, and it's not like this is really impulsive, but fast acting Mars, because Gemini is the fast actor, makes things really adaptable and spontaneous, but nothing like a fire sign. So it doesn't have that sustainability, at least. But quick, short, confusing actions is possible. All right, now we're going to take pretty much everything we said and apply it to most of these days, but I'll give you the differences or the things I haven't talked about yet. So this is Friday the 14th. I didn't talk about the inconjunct, and this is the ego and Venus, the vulnerable Venus, are changing into the future. So you've got Uranus signifies change. Changing timeline, changing into the future, speeding things up. And the inconjunct is adjustment. So it's change on change, adjusting to change, adjusting to technology, future technology. And then that has an effect on ego and Venus. So your ability to harmonize, or your ego that wants justice, and it's past time for that to happen. So again, getting sort of anxious for balance and peace and all those things makes you vulnerable for them. And then if we include the Pluto thing, that's another way that they're going to be able to control you. They're going to try to control you through this promising peace, because peace is weak, right? So they're going to offer peace. Just this week, for this week only, well, I think it is a general thing a lot of the time. Consider that peace is an illusion, right? But especially this week, peace is an illusion. They're going to use that to control you. So watch out for that. Saturday the 15th, this is their first T-square, and this one is the point of your emotions or your maternal instincts. You got the moon going back into Cancer, fresh into Cancer, and this is on Saturday. But look at all these squares. So you still do have the grand air trine, yes, as I mentioned before, it's all week. But this coagulation of energy. It's a pressure cooker here between illusion and escapism and transpersonal things, which is Neptune. And you also have Jupiter, and that's all square to Moon and Mars. So action is emotionally charged. It might get swayed more towards nurturing or obligation or empathy or just wanting to be at home. But it's a main focus. The moon is the focus on this T-square, so you get trapped in it. Trapped in home, trapped in big emotion, trapped in impulsive action. And you got moon and Mars together makes passion. Highly charged emotional trap via fantasy and illusion and excessive. That's the Jupiter aspect. It's overly optimistic about what you can eat, about what you can obtain, about what you can achieve. Doesn't matter. It's sort of excessive there. And that's where optimism, overly optimism or extreme optimism can be a problem in all those cases and more. Sunday the 16th. Nothing really new to report here. So it's just the same stuff. Monday, you've got another T-square that is being arranged by the moon. You can see the opposition here to Pluto. And now it's Venus combust is the trap. So ego just wants peace, right? Ego in Sun in Libra, but peace is weakened. So he wanted even more. Where is it? And so easily gullible to be controlled by it or be promised it as a precursor to control. There's this pressure to lead and follow. That whole continuum is there. And then this one is highlighted right here because it goes exact. So this is mainly Sun, Trine, Mars, but because Venus is right there, we're only talking about a degree and a half apart from each other. So it's also Venus, Trine, Mars. And that is also passion typically. But we're missing more of the yin side of it because yin is weakened. And so Mars becomes a lot more dominant in this picture. But it's easy to want to fight. Okay. And it'll be a mental thing. That's what I'm trying to think of the difference between like this alignment with fire signs. This is alignment in the mental signs. So it's more thinking about, being generated by the mind. Thinking about fighting is easier. Air signs can fight. So, beware of that. So it's not like we're not fighting at all physically, but it is more of a mental thing, just to keep that in mind. But where mind goes, body does follow. So you want to keep your mind away from the fights if you don't want to fight. If you do want to fight, the energy's there. So have at it. Tuesday, the 18th. I guess I do mention Saturn square Uranus. The protest alignment is there, 1 degree still. It's pretty tight, but it is opening. In other words, it's getting slightly weaker, very slowly. And we have Sun and Venus adjusting. This is more adjustments to fantasy or escapism. Ego is adapting to escapism, or ego wants to escape, or you can look at it the other way around, illusion. This speaks to this clarity thing that we're going to talk about in the solutions. It's tricky. This is going to be really tricky, and that's going to force an ego to maybe get more equilibrium or more balance or more peace that is not otherwise there. So there's more illusion there as well. And then the weekend Venus. All right, Wednesday concludes our CIRF week, the 19th. And it's another T-square. It's a different T-square. This one it's created by the moon again and Saturn. And the trap is Uranus in the future. It's almost the pressure to change, the pressure to alter the timeline, the pressure to maybe involve yourself in technology of the future. That urge might be very, very strong. This could also be an inventor alignment, a pressure to invent and to break the mold. So it's in Taurus, so it's the earth, the material world. And then this goes exact. And this is the chart that we're going to use for our conversion chart here to get to the solution. But it's Venus and Sun are roughly 1 degree away. So getting close. Once we get into about 17 minutes apart from each other. Now we're looking at Cazimi, but that'll be the next CIRF week, at the very beginning of that. And then we have the eclipse, the partial solar eclipse to look at for next week. But anyway, this, for the moment, on Wednesday, Venus and Sun, who are 1 degree apart, Venus extremely weak now, is exact square with Pluto. So this pressure to transform, ego, and very sensitive to control, very vulnerable, gullible, don't even have that awareness. Relationships are weak at this point. I don't think I mentioned relationship being weakened, but that's true all week with the Venus vulnerable. And then the finance thing. Finance could be a big problem for a lot of us in this arrangement. Very, very weak. So I would probably slow down on the spending this week. Don't put yourself in a bind if you can otherwise help it. That's about all I want to say there. So let's lighten this and get into the I-Ching. Look at that, 17. Hexagram 17 is following, and it's the urge to follow. Choosing a good influences brings supreme success. So we're all, according to the I-Ching, wanting to find that. And this is all about Venus combust square Pluto. In the affairs of humanity, change is constant. So it makes us, when change is constant, we're sometimes some personalities are looking for leadership or looking for guidance. What should I do? They're asking questions, researching. Others just want to take control because they feel out of control. So it's the whole continuum: to lead, to follow, to control, to be controlled. It's all there. So line 4 says, it often happens that as a person attains a position of influence, he or she attracts the chorus of flatterers who use their supposed loyalty to gain personal advantage. Be wary of such flatterers. Their influence is subtle but can be destructive. Flattery is most effective with immodest people with large egos. Hold your ego in check during times of success, and you will be able to see through the insincere intentions of others, including subordinates. Not being able to see parasites for what they are is a precursor to misfortune. All right, so this is stacked with the leader, follower, and flattery continuum. Now, there's only one change line, and that's line 4. So when we put the change line in, we get 3, difficulty at the beginning. We've seen this so many times in these CIRF reports. You get the idea now. I think the I-Chings over time have been telling us that this is the beginning, but it's a transition and can take a long, wearing time to make that transition. The birth of a new venture or relationship is an entry into the unknown. New things seem to be rushing upon you, and confusion can easily take over. Gain strength, find courage, keep going despite difficulties, and you will find success that you desire. A key challenge at this time is to maintain clarity. That's our first indication, well, other than the dream bot. In the solution is all about clarity. Avoid lunging at solutions. Do not start a new project or relationship before thinking it through. Does that not sound like a Venus combust in a grand air trine? The massive influence is the grand air trine. So think it through, but your Venus is weakened. So relationships are hard. Starting new things, hard. Make yourself wait until a good course of action becomes clear. A careless step in the beginning can cause events to get out of control later. All right, we put our conversion chart in, and okay, so here we go. I'm going to do something a little bit different. This CIRF report, I've chosen 2 because we got 2 in a square alignment. You got the Pluto square Sun, and it goes exact. So it's at its maximum strength here. And so I have converted both of them. You have the Sun in hexagram 32 with a Virgo solution, and Pluto is over in hexagram 61 and a Sagittarius solution. So don't worry, all this gets put into our overlap chart and extracts appropriately. So Pluto is in hexagram 61. That's the inner truth. That's perfect. And what is that about? The awareness of universal underlying principles. Sounds like clarity. In fact, inspiration that can bring clarity to the collective. Boom. This is the Great Awakening, folks. Pluto is in the Great Awakening hexagram and line. And the line is called appeal, which means it's one thing to have clarity. That's not really what they're talking about. They're talking about the clarity to the collective. It's that whole sequence. So it's public truth that can lure the public to a truth. It's happening energetically. All right. And then the Sun is over in gate 32. The only thing which endures is change. And so an underlying acceptance of change that may or may not lead to tranquility. That's powerful right there. Don't be so seeking peace and tranquility. Be accepting of change. You may or may not experience tranquility. The instinctive awareness to accept change and transformation. All right. Well, that will do it for the influences and the solution. So let's go ahead and summarize with our summary chart. So this is the leader, follower, influence, gullible to follow. Gullible because you don't have that relational awareness. And here's the overview of the influence. There is no lull prior to the eclipse season. Confusing energies swirl and change, but Venus is especially vulnerable to outside powers and hidden control. And these parasites will attempt to hitch a ride on your survival-based ego, who wants nothing more than Libra things. Peace, justice, balance, and that will make you vulnerable to control. It is this influence you should focus solely on this week, and the I-Ching just happens to be 17. There are no coincidences. All right. Remember, we had the I-Ching that said difficulty at the beginning, don't rush, don't do things that add strength. And remember, this part here is the solution. This is the recommended actions, and we're going to triangulate for it, all right? The rave, we had Pluto to appeal to the inner truth, i.e. clarity. And then we had the sun is the ego will change, the instinctive awareness to accept the change and transformation and not resist it. And then the sidereal, we have Sag and Virgo. Putting all that together, are you ready? Hopefully this will make sense. And the word clarity comes in on several of these, including the sidereal. I'll get started on that first. All right. What an amazing triangulation this CIRF week. The biggest overlap in the solution is clarity. Gaining it, maintaining it, and sharing it. Even when combining the sidereal solutions together, we see expansive and open-minded exploration as well as thorough and detailed analysis. This, my friends, equals pure clarity. So in my opinion, the combination between Sag and Virgo is pure clarity, is the desire for clarity. The behavioral goal this week starts with seeing your environment as clearly as possible without your personal biases, without emotional influences, and as little as perceptive interference as possible. Be curious for blind spots. Don't make assumptions. Drop your fear and explore for details, facts, and higher level answers. Higher level because Sag, it's a very spiritual, expansive type of archetype. Appeal to your inner truth and find the tranquility deep within. It is here where ego will find powerful transformation. One thing left is to share your clarity to the collective. This week, I don't know if you remember all those CIRF reports in the past, I'd say couple of years, all of us were asking for details and clarity. And we were starting to get to truth, but it was saying, the solutions were saying basically, it's not the right time to share. This is essential that you get not to just clarity, but sharing the clarity. So now we're in the opposite end of the spectrum for behaviors. We're not keeping secrets anymore. It's time to talk. It's time to share your clarity to the collective. But you have to mix that in. You have to balance that with idealism. A lot of our personalities are quick to share a quote unquote truth without first looking at the blind spots. So really make sure that you first do have that clarity for yourself, and don't assume that everything you've been taught or everything you've learned recently is the truth. Somehow balance that out and bounce off different ideas. You can start in small groups and then go to the collective to make sure that you have the clarity. But don't just get so quick to just automatically go. So part of the week is to travel and journey into clarity. And then the other part is to share what you've found with the collective, okay? So the statement that I am using is, I am a magnet and a beacon for universal clarity. And as I learn more and more, I realize just how much more knowledge I am deficient in, right? So I need to keep researching. I need to keep asking questions. I need to remain curious. Science always changes, does not stagnate. Science begs you to ask questions and challenge it. Science asks you to do all these things. But there's a lot of subjectivity out there too, which makes absolute truth finding very difficult. All right, I'm watching the time. We're about 40 minutes. That's about right. And I hope all of you have a wonderful day on whatever day you're watching this, both YouTube and Rumble. Appreciate all your shares. Your comments are helping. We're growing on both platforms, and I really appreciate that. But above all, I want all of us to explore for more clarity and be a beacon for that clarity, because the collective certainly needs it. Other than that, if I missed anything, it would be start to gain your energy for this next eclipse season. Going to have a partial solar eclipse and then a lunar eclipse, total lunar eclipse, I believe. And we'll talk about what that next 6 months will look like in the next CIRF report. So hang in there. And it's time to start taking these truths and shine them out. All right. All right, let's go do it, everybody. Have a great freaking week, and we'll see you next week.